In this video, I'm going to share with you my testimony of how I became a Christian. Hi, I'm Sam. I'm the co-founder of Kingdom Impact Lab along with my wife Tattoo, and we are here to help Christian entrepreneurs find more meaning and purpose in the work they do by aligning what they do in business with their faith. So this is my testimony. A few things before we start. First of all, this is hopefully going to be a shorter version of what happened to me. I have a longer version. I meticulously recorded all of the events that happened at the time, so that I could look back in the future without forgetting certain things. So I have meticulous notes on everything that happened, the circumstances and whatnot. The second thing is that, and this is also important as well, is that I'm not trying to interpret what happened to me. I just want to present the facts of what happened, and I have the notes as well. So, you know, I don't know what it means. I don't know why these things happened to me, but they did, and so I just want to share them. So let me start off with my background. My background growing up in England, the area where I grew up was an area of deprivation. It's only something I could recently acknowledge. The reason is because my area used to be a big industrial area where it was sort of you went and did the same job that your father did, and your father did the same job as your grandfather, and your son would do the same job as you, which typically would be working in the factory, working in the foundry, which was producing steel. It could be working in glassworks, which was around my area, coal mines, and this is how life was in my area for a long, long time. And then everything shut, and then a generation later, people kind of lost, and you know, it just degenerates into what it was. So my upbringing and the environment I was in was not exactly the best. The people that I used to know when I was a teenager at school, they can best be described as unsavory characters. Many of the people that I used to know ended up in prison, or for various crimes, and alcohol and drugs was a massive part of their lives, and obviously my life when I was younger too. Especially alcohol, and that was the story of my life until I hit about 30 years old, and then I decided to start drinking. And obviously, as an atheist, in my area there's no faith, no nothing, and so you grow up as an atheist, and inherently as an atheist there's no meaning to anything, and so you kind of think, what's the point? If things are tough, or you're going through a hard time, well, of course you're going to turn to drink because it's going to help you through the short term, or so you think, but actually it doesn't. It's more of an addiction, of an addictive cycle. You're a materialist, and as I got caught up in various mindsets, and I used to laugh at Christianity and call them crazy, and all of these things. And I used to actively say and do things which would mock Christianity, and that was as a result of the environment that I grew up in, of the complete lack of Christianity there, and probably my rebellious nature as well, because you look at it through the lens of someone in there when they haven't fully matured as an adult, and of course you're going to actively rebel against something that's been around for 2,000 years, and then in your infinite arrogance and infinite lack of wisdom and knowledge, you kind of think, well, this thing's been around for 2,000 years, and suddenly I've appeared on this planet in the last 20 years, and I know more than this uh, this thing that's been around for what 100 generations. I know more than them, you know, and that was the attitude I had. And naturally, I just fell into consumerism and all of the negative things, and you just spiraled downhill and downhill and downhill. So that was what happened. That was what happened before, and the crazy thing is, though, for me, is that without being a Christian, if someone, and I've actually said this to my wife Tattoo multiple times before I became a Christian and before I was even aware of things like this, I always thought that I had some kind of a guardian angel, that there was someone or something somewhere looking out for my best interest. I can't explain how it is. Just had that sense that there was something there. Can't explain it today, but it's something that I've always kind of said. And I think, reflecting back, the reason why I thought that is because things always worked out for me in the long run. You know, I took many risks, some of them calculated risks, some of them were just reckless things where I could have ended up killing myself more than once, from silly things that I used to do, or finding myself in serious trouble. You know, somehow I avoided it and got on the path that I am today. So, you know, there was always something there in the background that I thought existed, but I wasn't entirely sure. Well, anyway, let me share with you something that happened to me as well, which is kind of why I thought I had a guardian angel, but also there was kind of something else as well. So I remember a time when I lived in Vietnam, and my time in Vietnam, regretfully now, in hindsight, was dominated by alcohol. Beer was very, very cheap, as in some places you could get a glass of beer for about 20 cents US dollars. So naturally you're drinking a lot. And in Vietnam, the way that things were when I was there, and probably still are today, is that you go out, you drink a lot, and then you go on your motorbike and drive home. And unfortunately, that's what I did. And I remember going to a party at someone's house, and at a teacher's house, and the topic came up about religion and Christianity, and me, again in my infinite wisdom, which I'm saying here in quotes, I decided to mock it. I said that it's a load of rubbish. This is my hypothesis of what it's all about. My hypothesis is something I heard, I think it was from Richard Dawkins, I can't really recall, and it's like people worshipping a magic teapot that's floating around the planet. And I went on to say that and just, you know, kept mocking it and ridiculing it. Well, I got on the bike that night after drinking, which I did regularly, and on that way back I came off a bike and crashed. Again, how many times I came off a bike over 5 years was probably 2 or 3 times, and one of them happened pretty much immediately afterwards. I started to make fun of Christianity. It was, you know, I even remember at the time thinking something happened today, but then it was just pushed out of my mind and forgotten about. And then that memory resurfaced a little bit later, which I'll share with you in a moment. So that was my before: atheist, materialist, someone who actively made fun of Christianity out of ignorance, actively rebelled, involved in a lot of self-destructive behaviours to myself and those around me, and you know, that was my before. So fast forward many years, and this is this now is the end of 2023, I believe. And so at this point, I had managed to secure some level of financial security from freelancing and from starting my marketing agency. I won't go into the details of all of that in this video, but I will in another video. And I remember that because of consumerism and me measuring my own self-worth by external validation, which again I can now look back and see a bit more clearly. At the time I couldn't. I decided I wanted to buy a watch, and I wanted to buy a watch because I wanted a Rolex. Why did I want a Rolex? Well, I justified it to myself that Rolex watches will appreciate in value, so it would be better to buy a Rolex watch for a substantial amount of money, even the cheapest ones are a substantial amount of money, because the value of that watch will increase in value over time. So I thought, rather than keeping money in the bank, which is naturally going to lose value over time because of inflation. That's what I told myself. And in order to get the Rolex watch, we had to buy another watch first to get on the waiting list and all of these things. Long story short, I bought an expensive watch, not extremely expensive by a long shot, but you know, quite expensive, and something that I did not need because I already had a watch. So I just bought a second watch because there was no purpose or point of me spending my money on anything else. And I bought it, and I now rarely even wear it. You know, long story short, though, with the watch, but the reason I'm telling this is because it's significant. I came very close to actually spending a large amount of money, which I could have used for something else, on that Rolex watch, but as a result of the sales agent playing games with me, and me recognising what was happening, I ended the relationship with the agent and said, I don't want it anymore. You know, in hindsight, that worked out a lot for me, because why would I want to spend so much money on a watch for no other reason than vanity purposes? But of course I was caught up in consumerism and trying so desperately to give myself self-worth by having material, you know, by having things. And then while on the inside and actually internally on the business, I just couldn't get things to work. I just wanted people to perceive me as this successful entrepreneur, even though I wasn't. So anyway, on the day that I bought the watch, we decided to go out to eat at a resort, at one of the restaurants at the resort. This wasn't uncommon. We take the family out, my family and my wife's sister and their 2 kids. And so we went there, and we were walking around the resort before the meal. We were walking, around the harbour, and then we were on the way back to the restaurant. At the moment we were walking near the pool, probably 30 metres away from the pool, I just looked over and saw a commotion. One of the lifeguards jumped in the water and swam. Instantly, you know what was happened. And so I stopped, froze, looked over, and then I saw a commotion happening, and I knew what was going on. And for all my years, when I know that something bad has happened around me, you've got that urge to see what's going on, and I've tried to override that urge, because for me personally, when you see bad things happen, which I've seen a few times with traffic accidents and things, for me, I can't get that image out of my head. It's burned into my subconscious forever. I don't want to see it, because it's not a pleasant thing to have locked in your mind forever. For some reason I felt compelled to go over. Why did I want to go over? I don't know. My wife was urging me not to. I didn't listen. So I left my wife and her sister and the 3 kids at the time standing over there, and I went over to see what's happening. It was a young girl, about 4 years old, she drowned. And then the reality of what happened hit me. And you know, I saw them desperately doing CPR to revive her. And I stood there transfixed at what was going on. And that was the time when I prayed for the first time with sincerity to save the girl. And you know, in prayer I said, if you save the girl, I'll start believing. Prove you're real, you know, show me you're real, save the girl. Well, all of a sudden, you know, not long after, they moved the girl onto a side. There was a sense of relief. They resuscitated her. Now, on that night, I was in complete and utter shock about what I'd just seen. I did not understand the significance of it at all. But, you know, I prayed, and my prayer was answered right in front of me. So naturally I started to look at, well, what's the probability of me actually coming across, you know, someone drowning in the pool? I was literally walking past the pool. 10 seconds later, or 10 seconds before, I would have missed it. The thing that pulled me over to it was, I heard a commotion which lasted a few seconds, and I saw the lifeguard jump in the water. If I hadn't been in that spot at that moment, I wouldn't have seen the lifeguard jump in. You know, couldn't figure it out. Tried to find how many people drown in swimming pools in the place where I live per year. Couldn't really find that information. What's the probability of someone being resuscitated after drowning? You know, all of these things, trying to rationalise what I saw. Anyway, I thought about it a lot, but I didn't think about the prayer much. Well, about a week or two later, I think it was 10 days actually, we went on a family holiday to another resort which was about 30 kilometres from where we live. We'd been there several times before. The staff knew us, we liked it there. And then we were walking towards the restaurant on the night. It was dark. All of a sudden, we just heard a thump on the floor, and a coconut from one of the coconut trees had fallen and just smashed on the floor. I don't know, I didn't really see where it hit, if I'm being completely honest, but it very nearly hit my wife on the head, or my son on the head, who was 2 years old at the time. And you know, it missed them by definitely less than a meter, less than half a meter, and you know, with a kid that was almost 2 years old, just about to turn 2, they could have been anywhere at any point within that radius. You know, it was so close in hindsight, and that really sort of shook me to my core about how close that actually was. And it was on this particular holiday that my wife and I decided that we wanted to have a second child, which also made it more significant. So for me, it was the only way that I can interpret that situation is I prayed and I made a commitment in the prayer. I didn't follow through, so what happened with the coconut was it was kind of like a warning, so to speak, and it forced me into the position where I had to. I'm faced with something to make a decision. I'm faced with a position where, if I believe that there is no God, I have to accept that my wife or my son was a second or two from being hit on the head with a coconut, which would have killed them. Very likely would have killed them. Or I have to believe that it was divine intervention. And the crazy thing is, the staff at the resort were completely shocked at what happened, because, well, they remove the coconuts all the time in order to prevent things like this happening. And they told me that these coconuts, the coconuts in that particular tree, they're not ready to fall yet. They shouldn't be falling for a few more weeks, a few more months. Most likely, they said it was an animal or a bird or something that somehow managed to dislodge the coconut at that precise moment for it to fall when we were walking next to it. You know, the only way to interpret that really is, you know, kind of divine, especially when you compare it with what happened with the 4-year-old girl being resuscitated. So again, it was kind of like I made fun of Christianity and God before, and then immediately after I fell off a motorbike, and then this time I made a prayer and a commitment, and then I forgot about my commitment afterwards. I made an ask, I received something, and then I ignore it, I don't take action, and then another warning that kind of happened. You know, there's only one way to interpret that really, if you don't want to believe that I almost lost my son or wife, which would have destroyed my life and you know, all of the bad things about it. So anyway, after that I decided to go to a Christmas service, which was a few weeks later. My wife and I managed to conceive, or so we thought. We had a scan, and the doctor said that it looks like twins, which I was very excited for because twins run in the family. And 2 days before I was due to do a long race, which was the longest ultra run that I've ever done, it turned out that my wife had a miscarriage. Well, the significance of this was that there was nothing there to start off with, so it's not like we lost anything. So that was a plus. This significance of this does tie in a little bit later. But it happened 2 days before a major event on my calendar, the biggest event on my calendar kind of thing. And that was tough to get through, but the significance of this comes later, because it turns out that our second son, John, was born on Easter Sunday of all days as well, the following year. So that's kind of the build-up. So the next thing of where that ties into with the miscarriage is, so we started going to church regularly most weeks. I was still an atheist. I went there to support my wife. I said that, look, after what's happened here, I'm very happy to go to church. I'm very happy to see what it's all about. I'll go there, I'll support you. I want my child, my one child at the time, to grow up as a Christian. I saw no downside of that actually happening. But for me, I just didn't really believe so much, but I thought, I'll go there and see what's what. And there was one pastor, the senior pastor of the church, that whenever he gave a sermon, for some reason I paid attention a lot, and then I remembered what he said afterwards, which is profound, because with all of the other sermons at the time, I kind of just got a bit bored through them, if I'm being honest, because I didn't understand the significance. And so we started regularly going to church, and then later in the year, it was one of Tattoo's cousin's weddings, and one of the groom's family members decided unfairly, very unfairly, to come and shout at me. Without going into the details, he basically said that I should leave. I'm not welcome there, I should leave. Well, in hindsight, I think the reason is because I was a foreigner and he had some kind of problem against foreigners, and he decided that he wanted to shout at me. So we left, didn't want to be there, didn't attend the reception. You know, generally it was a bad day. And there was a strong significance on that particular day, because we got home, looked out the window, and there was a big fire that was in sort of the next neighbourhood across from us, and so we could see this massive plume of smoke and coming up out the window. And you know, this seems to be a common theme for me, that something happens, and then there's another external event that's completely out of your control that kind of adds significance to it, so to speak. So didn't understand why at the time, but in hindsight I can. So anyway, that event of us leaving the wedding and not going to the reception led me on a different path, which led me to have a thought pop into my head, which was completely uncharacteristic of me, which was, what if we go back to England and see my parents at Christmas? Well, we hadn't travelled in several years, we hadn't been back to England in a long time. The thought popped into my head, so long story short, we did. We went back. So it turns out that one of the relatives that we were close to, he had cancer. He got over it. We got to spend time with him. We surprised them. They didn't know him coming back, but we surprised them, and they were so happy. Probably gave him the best Christmas present ever. And a few months later, he dies unexpectedly from our perspective as well. But he died. And so if we hadn't have experienced the miscarriage and we'd have had a baby, we wouldn't have gone back. And we most certainly would not have gone back if there wasn't the incident of the wedding, because that set me on that series of events to go back to England. And then we got to spend time with my relatives before he died, which was very significant to us in hindsight. And that particular event of going back to England directly then put me on the path where I became a Christian. And so what happened next was we came back to Malaysia. We started to go to church again. We were supposed to go to the church for one Sunday, but it was there was a birthday party and didn't get back late, so we didn't go the next Sunday. And so the following Sunday we went, and this is where it still blows my mind, because the sermon that we go back to was a guest pastor, and it was around business stuff, and it really felt like this sermon was perfect for me at this time, because my marketing agency was failing. I couldn't get things to work. I spent all my money trying to make it work, couldn't get anything, no results, no nothing. So it was the perfect sermon at the perfect time. If we'd have gone the week before, which we should have, but there was a birthday party, we didn't get back until late, and all of these things as well. The sermon would not have spoken to me in that particular way. I would not have gone on that particular path. Well, this sermon did 100% speak to me. It provided me an answer to what I've been searching for, which was meaning and purpose. And you'll learn more about my search for meaning and purpose from the business perspective in the next video. And at the end, they were playing a song at the end, and the lyrics were going across the top of the screen, and all of the imagery and everything that happened, and there was just the message in the lyrics that was saying, I need you, I need you, I need you. And something happened to me, and it was sort of like deep within that this I need you, I need you, I need you kept reverberating, and there was something that happened, and it just wasn't coming from me, if that makes sense. The thing is as well, that on that particular day when I need you, I need you, I need you happened, was I woke up and it was a strange day on the Sunday. It was unusual, couldn't focus. I felt excited, as if something big was going to happen, as if the day of it's sort of you wake up on the day that you can go on a big trip, on an adventure, that excitement. And so I wrote it down on a piece of paper like this. I wrote it down on something like this, but I described what the feeling was because it was unusual, and I had a sense of something was going to happen. And so I wrote it down, I put the time on it of what it was. I put it into an envelope and I gave it to my wife. And I wrote on the paper that I think something big is going to happen. I think the sermon's going to directly speak to me and something's going to happen. Don't know why, don't know what, but I didn't tell her what was on it. I just said, put that in an envelope, keep it in your pocket. And then the sermon spoke to me exponentially more than I expected it to. And then I had that sense of I need you, I need you, I need you at that time. And so, well, naturally, that was when I thought something's happened, and that's when I accepted Christ. Just complete shock. I couldn't understand what was happening. Frankly, I was terrified by the whole experience because it did not feel like me. It felt like something external had kind of gone in that was influencing me. And the fact that I'd predicted it as well was just mind-blowing. Well, the next few days, everything dies down. And so I tried to rationalise what happened to me. And so I thought, okay, fair enough. I wrote, maybe I was expecting something, maybe I wanted this to happen, maybe it was the natural next step for me, I don't know. And I thought, well, I wrote these things down, I predicted it, but if I'm looking for something, it's confirmation bias, you get your reticular activating system in your brain, which is something that helps you recognise and makes you aware of different patterns and things, and I thought it was that. That was it. The next week we went, and it was another sermon related to business. I wrote down in my notebook, well, if I'd have attended this sermon instead of the one previously, I would have still naturally thought that what happened was this sermon directly speaks to me, even though it was the following week. And then I started to think, okay, I'm rationalising this. That was my thought process. And then a few days later, I'll go out for a run, and somehow I managed to fall over while running on the road, which is something that I haven't done in 5 years, and I run pretty much every single day for hours. Weekly I'm running hours, and I fall over, cut my leg, and just generally have a really, really bad day. Couldn't explain that. And then turns out I tripped over something that was like tripping over a branch or tripping over something on the floor. Again, that was sort of, I'd reflect back and think, yeah, maybe that was as a result of me making a promise and a commitment and not doing it, in the same way of me making fun of God and falling off the bike immediately afterwards, committing through prayer that I'm going to believe, not listening, and then, the coconut, and then accepting Christ, and then thinking, trying to rationalise what actually happened, and then falling over while running. This kind of pattern. So anyway, let me quickly go through the series of events that happened next. So I started to realise that, okay, I need to take this seriously. So I opened the Bible at random, thinking, okay, let's see if this works. Open the Bible at random, choose I open a page, I read through the passage, and then I excitedly say to my wife, oh, this speaks to me, something is about it speaks to me. Fold the page, think nothing of it. Come back a little while later and think, I'm going to start reading the Bible. So I open the page at the front of the book, and it's got the Apostle Creed reading plan. Go to this page, read this chapter, read this verse. Okay. Open the Bible. It's the page where I'd opened it at random, except for it was on the opposite side of the page. So again, you can calculate the probability of that happening. It just seems highly unlikely. Another thing that happened is, let me just pause things for a moment. And I'm back. Sorry about that. So, where was I? So what happened next? So, I remember one morning feeling compelled to go onto the balcony around 5 o'clock in the morning. It's normal for me to be up early, dark outside. Went outside and I stood on the balcony, which extremely unusual for me to do. And I was listening to a song, like a Christian song, and all of a sudden I had a sense within me that said, "You're special." That shocked me, because why did I think that all of a sudden? But you're special. Couldn't really understand that. Well, a few seconds later, someone starts setting fireworks off just opposite where we live. This is before sunrise. This is something that, in living in this place here for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years maybe at the time, maybe I've noticed that happen once or twice. It's kind of hard to say, but certainly something that's not a common occurrence. I mean, why would someone set fireworks off before sunrise right next to a residential apartment complex? It just makes no sense. Well, that's what happened, and the timing was so perfect that it was a sense of something within me that was not my own thought. Because why would I say you're special to myself? It just makes no sense at all, kind of thing. And a few seconds later, having the fireworks go off, it's sort of something that happens internally that has some kind of external validation, which makes it highly, statistically, it kind of low probability to happen. Don't understand that, but it happened. It was kind of the same as what I mentioned before, of an event which was so unlikely to happen at the relative's wedding, which put me on the path towards going back to England to see a relative who died shortly afterwards, and then that directly led me to becoming a Christian. That very day was kind of marked with, we got back home and saw a big fire, pretty much a kilometre away from where we live, which, like something happened on the day, and then for some reason I'm put in a position or where something highly unlikely external happened as well, which just reinforces and it kind of like it solidifies that entire thing within my memory. So that happened, and then I started to seriously take this stuff seriously. So the next thing that happened to me, which was equally bizarre, was I went for a run one morning, as I often did, long runs, and I looked at a podcast, and I was sure that the date of it was my birthday, that my birthday that year, and it was significant because I set myself a running challenge starting on my birthday that year. I was certain of it. So I went, I ran a personal best, came back, excited to tell Tattoo, looked at the podcast, and it wasn't the date. But the crazy thing is, in my own mind's eye, I can see the date in that particular format on the podcast that I listened to, and I just couldn't explain it. The thing is, the podcast was the perfect thing to listen to at the perfect moment, and the podcast answered a lot of objections I had about Christianity, and it wasn't, it was a Joe Rogan interview with Stephen Meyer, and this is the first time I'd even heard of Stephen Meyer, and I just, answered the objections that I had about God and Christianity and things. Well, couldn't understand where I got the date from or how it happened. It just seemed unusual, so I just wrote it down, recorded it, recorded the whole series of events and feelings I had. And not long afterwards, there was not long afterwards, a series of things happened in the business, which was extremely unlikely to happen. It led me to making the decision that I don't want to do this anymore. I've had enough. Enough is enough. And I text Tattoo Monday morning saying, I've had enough. I'm closing. I'm stopping doing this. I need to do something else. I can't keep doing it. We went to the church, and again we had no idea what the sermon was in advance. Well, it was by three people that were in business, so it was another business-related sermon. And the one person in the sermon, they had a slide, and the image on the slide was of a headline from a newspaper, and the date on that slide was my birthday of that year. Hang on. That's significant because I was so certain that I saw that the other day, to the point where I would have sworn an oath that that is what I saw, and I reflected on this a lot, and I wrote it down. I got meticulous notes of what happened. Couldn't explain that, but then that same day showed up on that slide at that particular day, a few hours after I decided enough is enough with the business. Couldn't explain that. So after the sermon, they had like a little seminar on, and so Tattoo and I attended it, and we listened to these business leaders who are also pastors. I think they're also pastors speak, and that kind of confirmed to me that I was on the wrong path in business, and that's what started me off, afterwards onto the business that I'm doing now, where I wanted to help Christian entrepreneurs with high ticket offers who might have struggled and suffered through what I have. So when we're sitting in this seminar waiting for it to start, and I'm chatting away to Tattoo, and I say, well, I couldn't. There was something I couldn't understand with why there was something I couldn't understand, and it was why. It was something that happened on the morning with LinkedIn, and which ultimately precipitated my decision to close the business, because they locked my account. They claim that the name on my account does not match my identity, and I'm kind of thinking, well, that doesn't make sense. So I sat there in this marketplace seminar after I've seen the date which I thought I saw before show up. As I'm searching for my name, and just on Google, put my name, LinkedIn, trying to find out, is this true? Trying to find my LinkedIn profile. All of a sudden, I come across an article in the Malaysian language referencing me from, I believe it was 20th of May 2021, I think it was. No, 20th of May 2020, I think. I think it was up. Yeah, 20th of May 2020. Well, why on earth would there be an article referencing my name in the local language? Turns out they quoted an article I wrote several years back. Well, the significance of this here is a few days later I got home, and I was at home, and I researched, I was trying to find out more about the senior pastor at the church, and I came across an article which directly aligned with 3 dates. So it was like the 19th, 20th and 21st of May 2020. These 3 dates aligned perfectly, and the article basically led me to discovering that the senior pastor, his 4-year-old daughter accidentally hung herself, which was several years back, and they managed to resuscitate her without any brain damage or anything. and she survived. And at the moment when I was reading that, the song Waymaker Miracle Worker was playing on repeat. By chance, I've never heard the song before, it just started playing, and then I just had that profound sense that something's happened to me. It was a terrifying moment, because the series of events which triggered me on this pathway was basically the experience that by chance there was a girl of around 4 years old that drowned in the pool, and that's when I prayed for the first time with sincerity to resuscitate her, and they did. And then to find later that the senior pastor went through a similar experience with his 4-year-old daughter at the time, and then for the son to autoplay Waymaker Miracle Worker, and that is who you are, just on repeat. It was terrifying, and of course I meticulously recorded everything that happened at the time, and after that happened, I started to take things very seriously, because I just couldn't calculate it. I understand that I might be looking back at things, attaching meaning to things, because that's what we do, but it just statistically it just makes no sense. Doesn't really add up statistically, probability wise, and it's just extremely unlikely. And so it took me a while to process things. I bought the senior pastor's book, I studied it, I found the book. This book provides the mechanism that I've been looking for as like a business framework. A whole bunch of things happened, and I started to process everything and trying to ask people what this meant, and feeling very vulnerable about sharing my story, and because I couldn't understand it, it just didn't feel right at the time. And then, I finally got the courage when I thought, okay, now is the time when I want to try and mention this to the pastor and just at least get his perspective on what happened. A few other things happened. I had a dream where the senior pastor of the church was there, and the dream was I was in a cave underwater, and the only trapped in a cave underwater with one other person, don't know who it was, and then the senior pastor came up from the water, he got me and then pulled me under the water, and then kind of showed me go through there to get out, which that was use ChatGPT to try and interpret what that means, and it was all aligned with the senior pastor might be there to help you on with transformation, of going through whatever it is, and all of these things here, which you have no control over your dreams. I have no control over the series of events, but everything brought me to this senior pastor. And it was a direct result of this senior pastor that I actually became a Christian too, because I listened to what he said. There was the time that I wanted to mention something and maybe get his opinion and perspective on things. Built up, I plucked up the courage. I said to Tattoo, it's time to tell him, time to make contact and see what he says, see if he can shed some light on what all this means. And that Sunday in church, there was a video played of an announcement by the senior pastor, which said that he had stage 4 cancer, and he was unexpectedly found out a week before, 2 weeks before, and he was undergoing treatment. He was about to undergo treatment for it, and so he was stepping down. And at that moment, there was something inside me that kept going again, step up, step up, step up, which wasn't my voice. I didn't really understand what step up means until I went and got clarity on what step up means afterwards. And it was sort of, even with that, I can't comprehend it, because how can everything that I went through, only to find at the moment I'm about to make contact with a pastor, just at least to help me understand what's going on, because it's terrifying, especially for someone that was an atheist for so many years. then he announces he's got cancer and he's stepping down. And to date, he hasn't returned to the church. So, at the time of recording, so I don't know. That's basically what my story is. The purpose of this video was, well, initially it was supposed to be short, but clearly it hasn't been. I don't mind. I don't mind if it's long, because this is just the first time that I've actually told this out loud publicly. I know no one's watching the video, so hey, so what, kind of thing. And it'll just help me kind of refine the story for the next time I tell it. So that's all. That's my testimony. That's it. See you in the next video.